Amy, welcome to Austin.
Thanks, guys. I'm so happy to be here. It's nice to finally meet you in person.
I know. We've done a few Zoom calls and it's not the same.
It's just not the same.
You might know Sunny better than you know Harry, though,
I know.
Honestly.
I feel like I was hoping Sunny was going to be here.
We drip out a little bit of Sunny content every now and then.
Yeah.
She's the best. We might need to get a bigger role for Sunny on the Meat Mafia.
People love her, honestly.
Yes,
She's so cute.
She needs her own little microphone.
Well, we're working on getting potentially a new studio where Sunny would be allowed in. So that could be
Pet-friendly.
big. That could be big.
We're gonna have lots of We Feed Raw in the fridge if that comes to fruition.
We're actually doing treats soon, which single ingredient, amazing treats. So we'll have those for you guys and for Sunny, for you guys to give.
We
to
could
Sunny.
try.
You can try. Yeah,
We're adventurous.
Do you remember how you two got connected? Because I think it was Harry. You had connected with Amy or someone on her team or something like that.
Rob, right?
Rob.
Yeah,
Rob from Gussie's Gut.
Yes. Rob, shout out to Rob.
He's the best.
He's the best. And they have such a good product. That fermented superfood powder is amazing. A lot of our customers add it to our food. And it's great. It's great. People love it. And even like all of our employees use it with our food for their dogs. And they're like, it just smells so good. Have you guys tried it?
It's like a topper, right?
Yeah. It's like a mix in. So it's like a gut boosting, like it's fermented. So it has all these fermented superfoods. And it also has cheese in it. So it smells really delicious.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good product. Yeah.
Sorry, go
I was
ahead.
going to say he formulated it with Dr. Billinghurst, who is the father of Rob.
He's the
We
legend.
had him on the show.
Oh, yes, you guys did.
Yeah.
Isn't he so amazing? I love Dr.
He's a
Billinghurst.
legend.
It's incredible.
Yeah. His like the historical perspective that he could like draw into the whole conversation around just species appropriate diets was so cool.
I know. He's so like, and he was doing this at a time when like nobody was doing it.
Yeah.
You know, like he was really such like a pioneer really, because no one was thinking this way. The vet community still isn't thinking this way, but as a vet to be really pushing this way of feeding, I mean, I think he got a lot of criticism and, he ended up being right. You know?
Yeah. So he was the first episode where we ever really dug deep on just like proper canine nutrition. So this will be the second episode.
Oh, okay.
So we're so pumped. It's big footsteps, but you can do it. And we were saying for the listener to give them some context. So you're the chief branding officer at We Feed Raw and a co-founder as well.
Yes.
So you've graciously flown in here from Hilton Head.
From Charleston.
From Charleston.
Yeah.
But Austin is a very special city for you because this is really the founding city of your company, right?
Yes. So I know it's so cool. It gives me goosebumps kind of. So We Feed Raw was originally founded by my sister, Alyssa, when she was living in Austin, Texas. My sister was a huge animal lover. We grew up with parents that were big pet lovers and rescuers. So we always had some stray animal that my mom had picked up off the street, or my dad had found the cat. So we were just always around that. We were just taught from a very young age that if you're a good person, you're kind to animals. I think it's also just part of our DNA. We come from a long line. Like my parents both have, their families are animal lovers. So it's sort of just like in our blood. But my sister really was, even more than all of us, she just loved animals.
Was it dogs or everything?
Everything. Like I remember being a kid and just like, we had like a mouse in our house and I think we caught it with like a humane trap. And I just have this memory of my sister like picking it up by the tail and gently carrying it outside while my mom's like screaming on the couch. And she just loved all animals. It was just always a part of her. So she grew up to be a big rescuer of dogs. And she had like 10 rescues at one time. She was rescuing them from, what's the Austin
Pets Alive?
Yes.
That's where I got Sunny.
Oh, that's where you got
That's
Sunny.
so cool.
See, so many connections. She's with us right now. I feel like my sister's like watching. So she had all of these rescues, and this was around like 2007, 2008. And I don't know if you guys remember this. You might be too young, but there was a spate of big pet food recalls in 2007, which were all connected to contaminated wheat gluten in kibble. So what had happened was, I think there was like a Chinese manufacturer that used melamine, which is like an industrial chemical, instead of the wheat gluten. And this sold it to American pet food manufacturers, ended up in the pet food and killed and made sick thousands and thousands of dogs with kidney failure. So at this point, it was really the first time that, people started thinking more critically about like, what the heck am I feeding my dog? Like this bag of dried pellets. Maybe this isn't the best thing. There was really just the beginning of a mind shift, I think. And so my sister was part of that mind shift. So she discovered raw feeding. She started feeding her own dogs raw meals, immediately saw the benefits, as most people do, when you switch them from a dry processed diet to a biologically appropriate one. And so she became an expert at doing this, right? She just learned everything she could, read all the books. And so she started making meals for her friends' dogs and then friends of friends' dogs. And the business grew from there organically. Her fiance, Rich, was a sushi chef. So he was really good at like helping to make the meals. He just like was a natural at it. So especially on a larger scale. So she sort of stepped back into the business side. He, made all of the food and they delivered it door to door in their little Honda Element and like scorching hot Austin summer heat, door to door. And it was this really great business and one of the first really to be doing it. And so it just kind of grew and they had a nice growing business. It was profitable. They were growing steadily. It wasn't like explosive growth or anything, but they didn't really want that. And that went on for like 4 years. And around 2013, tragically and shockingly, my sister in her early 30s was diagnosed with late stage terminal cancer. So this was obviously just so gutting for all of us, my whole family. We kind of like rallied together to figure out what to do next. And we were all on the East Coast. I was in New York City. My dad was in Maine. And my mom was in Massachusetts. So we helped to move them and all the dogs and the business to Maine. But at that point, she moved the business from an Austin-only business to an online business. So even though it was for like a really sad reason, moving the business online and shipping nationally obviously helped to grow the business exponentially. So it kind of like really grew at that point. And she, we went through all of the different things that, I think when someone is young and gets diagnosed with cancer, you kind of look for she did conventional treatments too. She tried chemotherapy. That wasn't working. So we also tried different things. Like she was juicing cannabis, seeing healers, all kind of like out there solutions too. And we were grasping at everything. We were trying, there wasn't really a lot of expectation. I don't think that it was like, I'm going to die. There was none of that really. It was like, I'm going to beat this really up until the end. Wow. And that was the way that she needed to die, if that makes sense, So when she did finally die on December 23rd of 2014, we were all completely, just grief-stricken and in a lot of pain. But we didn't really have a lot of time to think about next steps. Like, oh, should we continue this business? Like, it wasn't that type of business. It wasn't like, oh, we can take a step back for a month. Like, it would have died tomorrow. Like, people were waiting for their food. Like, we had a factory with a crew showing up. Meat was getting delivered. It was still a very small hands-on business. So I don't know if it was part of our grieving process that we just jumped into it, but we all kind of came together. Rich, this was Rich's job too, my sister's fiance. Like he didn't have another job, Wow. My dad came out of retirement to kind of take over my sister's role and do the business side. I went back to New York City where I had a full-time job that made this my second job, which was, I worked in marketing. So my background was really like, how can I make this, with my background, I thought, how can I make this a real brand and grow the customer base and secure outside funding? We really needed that. So I did all of those things. And we actually hired an agency in Austin, Texas called Preacher, who helped us do a rebrand. So up until that point, the company was always just like a supplier of raw. Like it wasn't really like a brand. It had a different name. And so I thought we needed something, that would really convey the philosophy and the values of what we were doing and also showcase how amazing the product was. And so that's what we did with Preacher. And to this day, I'd say it's like after the product, our best asset. It's really kind of like, it's modern, it's clever, it's fresh, it's cool. There's so much shitty pet food branding out there that it really helped us stand out. And I think it is very attractive and resonates with the millennial demographic and also the Gen Z demographic, who happen to be the largest pet owning demographic.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it worked out well for us. But yeah, I think like I always say, like we, as a family, we were trying so hard to save my sister for that time from like diagnosis to her dying that we then had this other chance to like save her company. And like, we were already in this mode kind of, and we didn't save my sister, but we did save her company. And there's a lot of beauty in that, you know, it's an extension of her. It's like still her living on. So
it's a beautiful story, and it's moving. Like, I feel like a lot of people when they are interacting with brands, they don't get to hear that authenticity, and your guys' brand is totally that. I'm curious if your sister had like that aha moment with raw food when she was like testing out the idea. Was there a moment where it was just like, this is the thing?
I mean, yes, there was obviously, when you see how quickly a dog can improve, like from their coat and their fur to like even the size of their stools. You know, everyone sort of has that aha moment. But yeah, I think that she just always, what was so interesting about my sister is that she never questioned it, even at a time like back then in 2008, 2009, like this was like people on the margins of society were feeding raw, you know, like
totally.
You had to be like, and she wasn't like, well, I don't know, is this right? Like she just knew. I mean, she had such conviction about it. And that's really, I mean, she was the visionary. She was the one that why this came into existence is because of her. I've just sort of developed it into a thriving brand. But I feel like, you know, we sort of still are working together in a lot of ways, because I hear her, you know, just the way that she would talk and the conviction that she had about this really helps to carry me through.
It's pretty beautiful how, like, in the wake of this indescribable tragedy, in some ways she left your family like this ultimate gift, where she gave you like her like prized possession, and like your dad's working on the business and now your husband and rich and everything. Like, I can't even imagine how special that is for you. You probably can't even describe how amazing that is, or the feeling.
It is. And those guys have like gotten out of it more, and they wanted to, but they're still like, it's still a very amicable, you know, like, I think I do see it as a gift to me. I think it's not a gift like, here you go, here's like $100 million business, have fun, right? It was like, here's going to be a shit ton of work, and you're going to learn a lot, and it's going to be really rewarding because of that. That's the type of gift it is. And it's every day, and it has been. It's taken me out of my comfort zone. I've been able to do things I never thought that I could do. I've learned so much. You know, the raw feeding world is pretty crazy. Like, and even just pet food in general, it's like a religion. There's a lot of very strong opinions. There's a lot of, you know, just people say crazy shit too, you know, like I constantly will get comments about people, you know, questioning, you know, we have an origin story video. I think you guys have seen it, where we talk about, you know, how my sister started it and how the family has carried it on, and people will say horrible things. It's like, for a long time, I didn't want to put that story out there because I didn't want to be open. It makes you more vulnerable to that stuff. But I also was like, it's so important for people to know this, because, you know, a lot of companies say they were founded on, oh, well, you know, here's my authentic origin story. And I'm not saying those don't exist, but this is really, truly, this wasn't founded because somebody wanted to get rich quick or had a great like entrepreneurial idea. It was because somebody wanted to do better for their own animals. And out of that, a business opportunity presented itself. And that's why it's here today. And it's still very much a part of the company, that ethos and that, you know, philosophy.
Amy, prior to you becoming like chief branding officer for We Feed Raw, what were you doing before that?
So I'm a writer by trade. I was before that working at a fashion company as a copywriter. Kenneth Cole was the name of the fashion company, which was kind of it was a fun.
I even know that one.
I feel like a lot of guys are like know it from like the suits and the square toe loafers or something. But yeah, it was a great place to be a copywriter in fashion, because they have like a very strong socio-political message to all of their, you know, headlines, and so it was more interesting than, you know, just regular fashion copywriting. But yeah, I wrote for magazines. I was a copywriter for other places. I wrote a book when I was in my, I guess, was I late 20s, about living with roommates after college. That was published by Simon & Schuster. Don't get it. It's
We're gonna
like
have
really
to read that. link in the show notes.
Yeah. It's like, I think you can get it used for like 2 cents on Amazon. So yeah.
Have you seen your fingerprint from that marketing experience on how you've been able to transition into We Feed Raw?
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, I was very much a part of when we worked with the creative agency here, like I was very much a part of what we decided on and how, you know, we've carried it through. And we've iterated on it since then too. I mean, and it evolves all the time, but I'm fiercely protective of the brand. I think it's really, really important. It might sound like superficial to people, but it's how people connect with a brand and trust a brand. And our story really has to be carried through all areas. So have my hands on all of the media channels.
Totally.
Yeah.
We've so a lot of our podcasts started off kind of Harry and I trying to explore this thesis of like why humans evolutionarily are just designed to thrive on animal products. And it's, taking the morality out of it just from a pure education standpoint, nutrition standpoint, why animal products are so nutrient dense and necessary for humans to really be able to thrive and live our best life. And in talking to some of these carnivore doctors, a few of them, notably Dr. Anthony Chafee, was talking about the fact that dogs and cats are also evolutionarily carnivore too. And one of the things that he talked about is he saw this study or some type of research that pointed to the fact that the average lifespan of a golden retriever has significantly decreased over the last 20 years. And his thesis was that it's diet. So in prepping for this conversation, I was like, average lifespan of dog over time. Yeah. I couldn't find anything on Google. Yeah. And then I was like, I typed in the question, like, are dogs evolutionarily carnivores? And the first 4 articles that pop up in SEO are arguing why they're not carnivores. Yep. And all those articles are sponsored by like the largest grain-based pet food companies. So you can't even find the right information out there.
We're working on that SEO now. But yes, it's crazy. I mean, the amount of, so we don't even get into the carnivore omnivore debate because clearly we believe dogs are carnivores. They're facultative carnivores or scavenging carnivores. But like, it's almost like people just go down this rabbit hole of like arguing about omnivore or carnivore. And it's like, okay, at the end of the day, like whatever you want to call them, they're meat eaters with no requirement for carbohydrates. Even AFCO, who writes the laws for pet food in the US, confirms that they have no requirement for carbohydrates. But then yet you have these kibble companies that are putting 40 to 70% carbs, cheap filler carbs, cereal grains basically in their diet. And we're expecting them to live, long, healthy lives. So I firmly believe that, the state of dogs today and, all of the diseases that they're getting and the fact that 53% of them are obese or overweight is directly related to the starch heavy, crappy food they're being fed. Yeah.
It seems like hospitals and also veterinary clinics have this like similar trend. Like and obviously there's a ton of bias in there, but when I go to a veterinary clinic, it seems like there's almost no healthy dogs.
I mean, that's definitely not.
Yeah. I mean, I think like when people, not to say that if you have a raw fed dog, and I always like make this clear, if you feed your dog a raw diet, it doesn't mean they're going to live forever or never get sick, right? We're not, it's just going to give them the best chance at a happy, healthy life, right? I do think though that raw fed dogs or dogs that are fed a biologically appropriate diet don't have to go to the vet as much. They're not. Also, a lot of our clients tell us that when they go to their vets, they don't even tell them that they're feeding a raw diet because they don't want to deal with like the backlash of it. I have like a funny story, but I don't know if you guys heard about the whole DCM thing. Do you know what was going on with that?
You were telling me about this.
Yeah. So DCM is an acronym for dilated cardiomyopathy, which is like a condition in which the heart muscle becomes enlarged and it's potentially fatal. It's a very serious thing. So in 2018, a bunch of vets reported that there was an uptick in DCM, and they assumed that it was connected to the popularity of grain-free diets. Now, there's 2 types of grain-free diets, right? There's the ones that are modified to be grain-free, and the ones that are naturally grain-free, like raw diets, right? The ones that are modified to be grain-free, they learned that these pet food manufacturers learned that people didn't want grains in their pets' diet. So they took the grains out, but they didn't replace them with animal protein. They replaced them with more carbs, just in like, legume form. So all of a sudden you have like, pea protein, all of the chickpeas as like main ingredients in large proportions. Dogs aren't designed to process those. It still has not been confirmed that that's linked to it, but I believe that it will eventually come out that there's probably some connection with these like legume ingredients in high proportions that are anti-nutrients contributing to dogs getting DCM. Anyways, the point is vets have like taken it like created this shitstorm of like people going crazy, like, oh my gosh, like I've been feeding grain free, and then everything grain free got lumped into this category, including naturally grain free diets, like raw diets. So we still to this day have people like constantly asking us like, but don't I have to add grains to my dog's diet? Even though the FDA has recently released, a statement saying we have found no causal link between diet and DCM.
Wow.
And especially in raw diets were never implicated, but vets implicated them. So my brother recently took his German Shepherd to the vet. I think his German Shepherd is like going to be 9. He's been eating raw his whole life, all raw. And when he was in there, the vet was asking, oh, what are you feeding? And he told him a raw diet. And the vet said, you should just start adding some rice to that diet. And my brother was like, why? Oh, well, there's research coming out that's proving that dogs are getting DCM when they don't have grains in their diet. And my brother happens to be an orthosurgeon, so he's very adept at reading clinical research. He's like, can you send me or tell me where I can read the study? So the vet told him, and when he left the room, my brother was Googling it, and the study said nothing about about raw diets or naturally grain-free diets being linked to DCM. It did say that there might be some link with, legume-heavy grain-free diets. So when he said this to the vet, he was like, there's nothing in here that says anything about raw diets having, and the vet said, oh, I didn't read the whole study. I just read the title. And like, these are the people that are giving information to, they're the ones who are disseminating the information. Gosh. And why wouldn't you trust your vet? But like, my brother happens to A, know a lot about raw feeding, B, be a doctor and like know how to read these studies. So it's just like, that's just my brother too. That's someone I know that happened to telling me that story. So like, how many other times is this happening? It's just infuriating.
Because we have this, we talk about this a lot in human medicine. We have this condition, doctor-patient practice, where it's like, if a doctor recommends something, you just blanket follow whatever they say. Yeah. So if your brother's like the one orthopedic surgeon out of 100 patients that this vet has, 99 other people are definitely going to just follow what he says and just give their dog rice.
Totally. And even another orthopedic surgeon who didn't read raw might do the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't even read the study. You just be like, okay, this vet, I trust that he's done the research to, give me the accurate information. So just insane. So
when did the ingredients for dog food or just how we were feeding our dogs change? Because when I was going through, I got Sonny in July of last year, and I'm going through the pet store and reading the labels like a psycho, and I'm like, there's seed oils in all of this, there's grains in all of this, and I know that these aren't good for humans, and I'm assuming that dogs biologically react negatively to those highly processed oils and grains just similarly as humans as well. So there had to have been a turning point, I'm assuming.
So basically, the first pet food, like the dry dog biscuit, was invented in like 1860 by not a vet or an animal nutritionist or anything. It was just a businessman, actually, who saw like sailors throwing hardtack, which was like processed food, over the ship, and stray dogs were eating it. And he was like, oh, I have a light bulb moment. Like, I'm going to invent. So that happened. And then kibble was actually not even invented until 1954. So this is what I try to get through people's heads, is like, dogs did not lose their ability to digest their evolutionary diet just because kibble came along less than 100 years ago. Like, that is not the way evolution works. Right. I mean, some experts say it takes at least 100,000 years for a dog to change its dietary needs. So before that, though, dogs were, they might not have been eating like a complete and balanced raw diet, but they were eating real food. They were eating table scraps. They were eating scraps from the butcher. They were eating whatever the families were eating that was like left over, right? Mm-hmm. So that's way better than what they're eating now, which is like highly processed, carb-heavy stuff, And I also say, just because dogs weren't eating a complete and balanced raw diet necessarily, like, that entire time, that is the best. That is the optimal diet. That is what they're designed to eat and digest, right? They have been living and surviving on that from the beginning of time, since the dawn of their existence, for millennia. It is literally what they are designed to derive their nutrients from. So when you introduce, all of these carbs to them in a food, it's just like, it makes no sense. The ancestral diet had virtually no grains, So it's just really crazy. Our nutritionist that we work with just says, like, a lifetime of excess carbs is so damaging to a dog's health, and yet we're feeding them a lifetime of kibble.
Yeah.
That's all we're feeding them, day in and day out. And we really, we feed raw. We used to be a lot more severe with this approach, but we really try to say, as long as you're feeding some fresh raw food, it can get cost prohibitive if you have like a bunch of huge dogs in the home, right? Like, you can't feed 100% raw, but just feed some. It's way better. And like, it's not just like, not some kibble isn't going to be so harmful to your dog. It's really not. But day in, only kibble, day in and day out will be. And we're seeing that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the difference between eating cereal all the time versus having some cereal and meat as
Red
well.
meat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like imagine feeding your kid, dry cereal. They would survive, but they would be really unhealthy.
Totally.
And they can talk to you at least. So they'd be like, my stomach hurts or whatever. Like dogs they eat what we give them. And they, even people are like, oh, my dog loves their kibble. I'm sure they do. It's like junk food, right? It's sprayed with all sorts of flavorings. It's packed with delicious, cheap carbs, it tastes good to them. Although I have to say, like most people, when they switch to raw are like, oh my God, my dog is gobbling up the food. I think they prefer that, but dogs can get addicted to kibble.
Just like humans.
Yeah.
And on that parallel, did Eisenhower have his heart attack in 1954 or 1945? Do you remember?
I think it was late 50s.
Yeah,
potentially.
It would be it would be crazy if it was the same year because you said kibble was invented in 54.
That would be.
Have you heard the Eisenhower heart attack story?
No.
So it was either 1945 or 1954. Eisenhower had a heart attack. And so he was out of the Oval Office for like 6 days or something like that. And the stock market had one of the biggest crashes since like the Great Depression up to that point. And this scientist named Ansel Keys out of the University of Minnesota believed that it was saturated fat that caused his heart attack.
Okay.
So he basically launched this crusade on saturated fat and organized this like 7-country study where he took 7 different countries and basically showed their consumption of saturated fat and their overall instances of heart disease. And so when you look at the 7 countries that he plotted, it shows like a perfect 1-to-1 correlation. But there were 28 other countries in that study that did not. It showed a little bit of correlation, but obviously a little bit of correlation doesn't mean causation.
Right.
But he didn't release those 21 other countries.
He cherry-picked the data.
Exactly. Yeah. And they launched this entire saturated fat crusade. Then you start to see more of like the introduction of vegetable oils. The American Heart Association gets like a $1.2 million donation from Procter & Gamble that created Crisco. Wow. So if it's the same year, that would be wild. But either way, there's still this like 10-year window where both humans and pets were eating this like evolutionarily consistent diet. Yeah. And that's really when we start to see the introduction of processed foods and like like the obesity, like you said, the obesity rate of pets is like 50% plus. And I would have to think the cancer rate of dogs is even higher than humans too, because I feel like every dog that I know of like dies of cancer.
I think they said 50% of dogs will get cancer after the age of 10. 6 million dogs a year die of cancer. It's like really crazy. Like that's not normal. We're just like, people just accept my dog is, the average lifespan is, I had an English bulldog for a while and she lived until she was 12 years old, which is long for an English bulldog. Definitely, right? Everyone's like, oh, she's only going to make it to 8. And I was like, she ate a raw diet. She had none of the English bulldog, typical problems that you would see. Like she wasn't overweight. She did. Of course, the way that they're like she snored a little, but she was really a healthy, fast, bulldog that, and every time we'd take her to the vet, they're like, this is the healthiest bulldog we've ever seen. Like, oh, the raw diet. Oh, nothing, crickets.
Yeah.
If a bulldog's not snoring, they're not happy.
Yeah, I know. It's a sign of happiness.
Yeah, it's amazing. I also wonder too, like with the environmental toxins that dogs might encounter at a higher level than humans, like glyphosate, for instance. Roundup is sprayed on everything. And like even people's lawns, like, they spray to kill all the weeds. Then your dog goes and runs around outside on that. And like, it can't be good for them. They're
dealing with a lot of stuff, but I think the biggest offender is what we're feeding them. If we just started there, dogs aren't supposed to die as soon as we have to rethink all of this stuff. People, it's the craziest brainwashing I've ever seen. It's smart people that are just like, not even the vets. And I hate to go after the vets because we think vets are wonderful. They're doing a great job. Our nutritionist says, vets fix broken animals. Nutritionists stop them from getting broken in the first place, right? But it's like they've sort of just tried to own the nutrition piece of it. And it's not fair because you haven't really been educated or given all of the unbiased information. They, are learning about nutrition from kibble-funded studies only. So, we are seeing a shift here. We work with conventional vets, not holistic. We work with holistic vets too, but we are getting approached by conventional vets who want to feed our food. We have one conventional vet. She went to UC Davis. She's like an amazing vet. She was not taught about this in vet school. And she has like her dogs and agility training on the weekend. So she was seeing all these other dogs that were like amazing athletes. And she was like, what are they eating? and they're all eating raw diet. So she switched her dog. Her dogs were suffering from all sorts of stuff on kibble. She switched them, and they've been eating our food for like almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
You know, conventional vet who wasn't taught about it, any of this in vet school. So
it's almost like you need to have that anecdotal experience to make you desperate enough to be able to make the switch to see the benefits for yourself.
It's true. I think like it's tough for vets too, because like imagine you went to vet. They all want the best for dogs. I really don't buy into like that they're trying to like, you know, get kickbacks from. I just don't think it's that. I think that they didn't learn about it in vet school, and then you know you're very attached to what you have learned, and there's a lot of these vets that see raw diets gone wrong. You know, like people are trying to do it themselves, and not to say that you can't do it yourself, but sometimes people just think crazy things, or like just feeding hamburger meat with nothing else, or so they might see the bad side of it. They're also completely obsessed with the bacteria part of it, which I don't know. I just think it's like pretty crazy because dogs are designed. They have like, if you look at their anatomy, all you have to do is look at their biological makeup and it will tell you what they're supposed to be eating. They have short, simple digestive tracts, high level of hydrochloric acid in their stomachs, sharp teeth. I mean, they can eat lots of things, right?
Yeah.
They can eat their own shit, and they're going to be fine. But for some reason, I always say too, like, have people see their dog sometimes, like your dog will kill a squirrel, or like, are you rushing the animal to the vet after that?
Yeah.
It's like so, like, but oh my gosh, if they eat a piece of raw meat, like they're all going to die. So I think that the bacteria thing is obviously dogs can handle bacteria in ways that we cannot. We do the FDA. I don't know if you guys know this, but they have a zero tolerance policy on pathogenic bacteria in all pet food.
Interesting.
Raw food is included in that. So in order to deal with that, we use something called cold pressure processing. It's a natural, it's used on a lot of people foods. You guys know about it in people. So it's used on cold, like juices, raw milks, lots of meats and fishes, fishes. It's really baby food. It's used ubiquitously in people food. It's become like this crazy controversial topic in raw feeding, but it's a great way to be compliant because it allows us to, it's natural. It doesn't use heat, doesn't use chemicals, it doesn't use non-natural additives. It basically uses extreme cold water pressure to inactivate potentially harmful pathogens, but it doesn't inactivate, it still keeps the enzymes of interest alive. So it's not a dead food. It's not a sterile food. But yeah, it's a crazy, I always say like, if the problem that vets have is the pathogenic bacteria, then like any big raw pet food company in the US is using this.
Wow.
So that's addressing that problem, right? And
Totally.
we're not doing this because we think that the dogs can't handle it without it, but it is a safe way for the people feeding it. So if you have children and small children in the home, immunocompromised people in the home, elderly people in the home, it is a safe way because dogs are eating it on the floor. They might be getting it, on things, and
right.
It's a nice way to be able to be compliant.
So for someone who just switched their dog over to a raw food diet, I imagine you guys see so many different reviews and customer success stories, but what are like the favorite ones that you like to hear about from your customers?
Yeah. Oh gosh, we have so many. There was one recently that a lady who was like, your food has like changed our lives. Her dog was only, I think he was 8 months old, a pit bull covered in hives, like all his fur, like she sent us pictures. It was like so sad. He was just losing all of his fur. He was having crazy allergies. He was getting allergy shots and steroid shots once a month. Nothing was working. So one of the influencers that we work with who also has 2 big pit bulls, this woman followed her and asked her about our food. And so she switched her dog, and the dog is like, all his fur grew back. He doesn't have to get any of the allergy shots. Like all of his symptoms are, he's still like, his fur is still, there's still a little bit patchy, but he's basically healed, from food. And it's just crazy that was never an option that was given to them from the conventional, side.
One of my favorite sound bites from our podcast was with the regenerative farmer out of Virginia, Joel Salatin.
Yeah.
And he talks about how the healthcare costs in the US and food costs make up about 30% of a US person's budget. And over time, the cost of healthcare, it used to be like 10%, like about 100 years ago. And the other 20% was made up from food costs.
Yeah.
And that has inversed over time, where now we're spending 20% on healthcare and 10% on food. And you guys must run into that a bunch, just like seeing the effects of paying a little bit more upfront for raw food, but then people not having to spend so much on veterinary bills, which are insane.
It's so true, but it's so hard to get people to think that way.
It's so
It's
hard.
amazing. I'm like, okay, you're paying more. We just did something today where I was talking with the team, and it was like, what's the point of budgeting less for healthy food if you're just going to end up paying more for your dog's illnesses? Like, if that's what happens. But like,
100%.
it's hard to think that far ahead. And also, people just get caught. It's like, I call it a reallocation of funds. So it's like, you have a problem paying this much money for pet food, but you don't have a problem paying thousands of dollars to get this tumor removed, like all of these allergy shots or these, like all of the things that come along. It's like they have so much more allocated for vet care than food. And it really doesn't have to be that way. But I think because it's like hard for people to see, they're so microscopic. It's like, okay. And also your vet is telling you, get a new dog. You go to the vet. I want to feed my dog a raw diet. I mean, I cannot tell you how many clients say to us, like, get so excited, they're going to feed. Then they go to the vet and they're like, my vet's telling me not to do this. It's like really dangerous. It's going to make my family sick. It's going to make the dog sick. And so we have to like talk them off a ledge every single, I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, I don't know how to, there's obviously a sticker shock with our product. People get mad at us. They're like, you're ripping people off. You're greedy. And I'm like, if we were greedy, believe me, we would not get into the raw food business.
Totally.
This is like the margins are just not there. Okay. Kibble is always going to have better margins than this. Quality costs more. Our food costs what it costs because like we're using USDA human grade meats. Like nothing is rendered. Like it's like no filler, this is just, it's real food. So I just think people, I don't know. I think that they've been trained to expect to pay a certain amount for your dog, and anything above that is greedy or astronomical,
Oh yeah. I think you guys should do a whole PR campaign around this concept of reallocation of funds, honestly, because I think it's that powerful.
Yeah.
The term that we typically use is like viewing food as like a holistic asset, which is the same thing. It's like you're paying $10 for regenerative beef versus $4 grocery store beef because it's going to make you healthier. You're going to lose weight. You're going to have more energy. You're going to make more money. You're going to be able to play with your kids. Yeah. Literally an asset that keeps on generating stuff for you over time. Yeah. But reallocation of funds is essentially the same thing where it's like this price is like you are going to pay it. It's like you either can pay some of it up front or you could pay a lot more in the back end, but the choice is ultimately yours. But there's like so much rewiring of human psychology that we need to do too.
I know. And I think like I'm obviously, going through, I was always a healthy eater and just a healthy person in general, always interested in health and wellness. But when my sister got sick, it's a whole new, journey of, discovering things. And also, we were all trying all these diets. My sister did raw vegan for a while, which I'm not a vegan. And but I do think cutting out all processed food, you feel better, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, I've experienced the power of food myself, and it's not an overnight thing, right? It's sort of like turning the temperature up in a room. Like you're like, oh wow, like this is amazing. Like I feel better now. I think I feel better than like I did a month ago, and then it's like sort of builds on itself. But people in our society, it's like they want instantaneous, results. They want to see and that doesn't happen with healthy eating or healthy food. It's not going to happen with your dog. You're not going to feed your dog raw in one meal and then everything's going to be cured the next day. But you can go to the vet and get like a shot and it will maybe cover up the symptoms for a while. And, you know, so I think it's hard. You have to have patience. You have to just have that mindset. And I don't think people even have it for themselves. The majority of people don't necessarily have it for themselves.
So how are you supposed to have it for your pet if you don't have it for yourself? So for the concerned pet owner that's like, maybe their dog is on kibble now and they're really interested in what you're saying and they're like, damn, I'm interested in making a switch. What are those like core foods or ingredients that you're incorporating into We Feed Raw that like everyone should be incorporating for their pets?
Okay. So, we offer a complete and balanced product. So it's based on the ancestral diet, which is roughly like 80% muscle meat with connective tissue and fat, 10% organ meat, all of which is secreting organ, and 10% finely ground raw meaty bones. So, I mean, it's hard to tell. Something like that is great, right? Try to find a complete and balanced raw brand. It's easier. It's very hard to, do DIY raw. I know people do it, but I'm like, man, I wouldn't do it even if I didn't have this company. It's like, it's freaking hard. You have to have a grinder. I mean, it's just so, I think that if you can start, that's obviously the best, right? But adding any fresh food to your dog, like even if it's something you're eating, like just give them something fresh and whole that isn't a dried, carb heavy, highly processed, cooked to obscene temperatures pellet. you know? So that can be anything from adding even like a little hamburger meat or adding some steamed vegetables or, you know, just fresh food.
Yeah.
You can start there. I mean, either they say even 10% of fresh food can have a huge difference on your dog's longevity. But yeah, I mean, those are the best thing is to try to mimic what they ate in the wild. That's going to give them the best chance. And our nutritionist that we work with, you know, he says that people ask him, you know, okay, he'll give lectures and someone will say, you know, my dog is 14 and has cancer. Like, what should I be feeding them? And he's like, I obviously never say this to them at the time, but what the sentiment is like, this should have been a question you were asking 14 years ago, you know?
Not now.
Not now. And it's sad for these people because they want, you know, and like a lot of people that are feeding kibble they want the best for their dogs. They're just don't have the information. And yeah, I mean, but the best thing you can do for your dog is start them as early as possible on a diet that nature has decided is best for them. You know, we use nature as a guide.
Yeah.
That's the best thing that you can do.
Okay, I have to ask you this question because I'm so curious if you've heard it before. Yeah. So when I got Sunny, she was being fed a raw diet. And then there was like a 3-week period where I fed her kibble because I was moving around a bunch. And I noticed that she drank so much more water when she was on a kibble diet. And I got her back on the raw food diet. And she really it doesn't seem like she like needs water at all almost. Like it's actually kind of strange. Like unless she goes out and plays fetch for a long time, she comes back in, needs water. Yep. But otherwise she really doesn't. Have you heard that?
Yes. It's like one of the biggest concerns people have when they start feeding dogs. They're like, my dog isn't drinking water. Like, what's wrong? So dogs are designed to get their moisture from their food, not their water bowls. I mean, yes, of course, we still want them to drink from their water bowls, but kibble is about 6 to 12% moisture. Raw is about 70% moisture. So they're really getting all of the moisture they need from their food with just like, some drinking from the water bowl. And if it's hotter, more drinking. But, you know, dogs and cats especially are chronically dehydrated when they're on a dry food diet because especially cats, they really are designed to get their moisture from their food. So
it was noticeable. Like when she was on kibble, she needed water immediately after. Like throughout the day, she needed it more. So I saw that and I was like, this is it's like a cool little experiment.
Totally. I know people like we have to actually warn people of this because they get concerned that there's something wrong with their dog because they're not drinking. And it's really happens pretty fast too.
Well, now you know.
Yeah.
70% moisture. That's incredible.
70% moisture. Yeah.
Wow. I was watching this documentary like a year ago called it's called The Magic Pill. It's free on YouTube. Everyone should check it out. It basically talks about why saturated fat and animal products are so healthy and so essential for humans. And one of the things it talks about in the beginning is how humans are the only species the only species that doesn't know what to eat, which is so interesting. It's super humbling too, because it's like all the scientific advancements we've made, all the technology, and we don't know what to eat compared to anything else in the wild. And I'm like, that's technically not true because it's humans and then also like domesticated pets as well.
That's true. Well, but if we left them out in the wild, they probably would choose to eat, you know. I mean, dogs tend to be less good at being predators than cats, for example. I guess that's sort of historically like true. But yeah, I feel like if you give a dog, it depends though. You know, it's hard to say like, oh, give a dog a bowl of raw meat or give a dog a bowl of kibble. What will they eat? Because if they're addicted to the kibble, there might be a chance that they would eat the kibble because it does taste good to them. You know, it is junk food. And sometimes one of the biggest problems we have transitioning, we always say the pet parent because they're harder than the dog sometimes. But these dogs will turn their noses up at it at first because they have no idea. They're like have been conditioned to think that this dry other food that's sprayed with all sorts of like flavor enhancers and additives is food. And then what is this other stuff that's like usually a colder temperature? It's really strong smelling with like organ meat. It's not always an instant like, oh yes, this is my ancestral food. You know, dogs don't always have that. So we have to like walk people through it. And a lot of people don't have the patience or persistence. And we have to remind them that dogs will not starve themselves. Like if you are providing them food, they will eventually eat. Just stick with it. But a lot of people won't because they're just like, oh, my dog must not like raw, you know?
Yeah. I remember when I was growing up, we got a dog and the breeder was recommending a raw food diet and there was so much opposition to it. And I remember my mom was just like, there's like no way we're going to feed our dog a raw diet.
Was she afraid of the bacteria?
I think it was more so like the bacteria and actually like handling raw food. But I remember hearing that and being like, it makes sense Like these dogs would have been eating, scraps of kills that we would have like evolutionarily evolved with them, and they would have been eating, kind of things that we would have killed.
Yeah. I mean, we've bred dogs for their looks, their behavior, and their temperament, but their digestive systems and form and function are identical to their ancestors. Like has not changed. So there's like no reason they should be eating exactly what like they were eating, One
of my favorite things on the internet is seeing the meme pictures of dogs just laying in the sun. And it really like reminds me so much of just like the parallels between dogs and humans and the things that we've gotten wrong.
Yeah.
Like dogs naturally, intuitively, like just go to the window and sit in the place where it's sunny.
Yeah.
Like this is amazing. They're just doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I think the best part about this conversation is the fact that so much of it can be applied to human health too.
Totally.
Like all of these different like angles on improving a dog's health can be applied back to humans and vice versa.
Totally. And like just keep it simple. Like it's like doesn't have to be so complicated, you know? Like that's the thing that people get wrong. And like I think also the pet food, big pet food has done an amazing job of scaring people away from feeding anything real. It's like, if it doesn't come from this perfectly scientifically formulated bag that we're selling you, do not feed it to your dog. Like,
totally.
All of our articles that we do on our blog, like, can my dog eat X? Whatever that is. Can my dog eat bananas? Can my dog eat raw eggs? They're like the most clicked on article. People are like Googling all the time because people are so afraid to feed their dog anything, right? And that was like a big marketing campaign when kibble was introduced, was like, because what were people feeding before that? They were feeding table scraps. So they had to think about a way to like scare people away from like feeding that way, right?
Yeah.
So it's lasted and it's like so strong to this day, Yeah.
And there's so much greenwashing in pet food, just like there is with human food too. Like we were talking about that brand, Blue Buffalo, not to shit on any brands in particular, but like they're advocating for this like chicken-based dog food. And it's really like, they're like, oh, chicken is ingredient number one. And there's like 60 other ingredients in there too, but they're leading with chicken first.
Yeah, and it's probably chicken meal. I don't know. I haven't.
It is chicken meal.
So do you guys know about meat meals?
No.
Okay. So I always say there's 3 big things wrong with kibble. The first one is that it's biologically not appropriate. The second one is that they're using very low quality ingredients. And the third one is that it's highly, highly processed. So the low quality ingredients, the ingredients in kibble, the protein source that so first it's packed with cheap fillers. Okay. That's like cheap filler carbohydrates. That's like the big problem. Then they use plant-derived protein. So that comes from, chickpeas, peas, lentils. And then they use rendered animal protein. So rendering is a very interesting, kind of a dark hole to go down. But rendering is the process of recycling raw animal material, grinding it up, cooking it in a big vat like a stew, and then drying it to create this like powdery substance that's then sold as a protein source to for animal feed or to pet food manufacturers for dog food. Obviously that's like, it's, very, very, very processed. The quality of the meat is usually not very good. And then there's named byproduct meals. So if you see on a label like chicken byproduct meal, beef byproduct meal, turkey byproduct meal, those legally all have to have the name of the animal in the meal. There's also generically named byproduct meals. That's when it gets like pretty dicey and disgusting. So those can have any animal in them. So these rendering plants, there's not a lot of like safety or quality checking going on. They're kind of just collecting animals from all different places. So that could be diseased and dying farm animals. That can be euthanized horses and pigs. That can even be euthanized pets with like the collars still on and ID tags still on. They're like in the plastic bags. They don't take those off when they're throwing them in the grinder. Everything just gets thrown in there. And so that's why you'll sometimes see these headlines where it's like dog DNA found in like 2 new dog foods. And it's like, how do you think the dog DNA is getting in there? The pet food manufacturers aren't like scooping up dogs and like, but they're buying the rendered protein that then has these other animals in it. So it's pretty scary, the rendered animal protein.
Is that rendering happening in the US or is it primarily like China or other countries?
No, I mean, it's happening here. There's all like independent rendering plants, and it seems like they kind of can do, there's a lot of, it's pretty controversial because like it's a very effective way of recycling, right? what are you doing with all this waste, right? It's got to go somewhere. So, I don't know. I'm still not going to feed my dog that, but a lot of it is a effective form of recycling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
you just made me think of something. Culturally, are there any countries that feed their dogs differently than we do in the U.S.?
That's a really good question. So I found that like in Australia, they're like a lot more forward. They're like farther, like the raw food market takes up like a bigger percentage of the market share. I think the US is probably like farther behind. I think like Europeans just tend to be more open-minded about that stuff too.
Yeah.
So I don't know all the statistics, but yeah, I think America's pretty dismal as far as like, the way that like kibble is it's a behemoth industry.
Yeah.
Behemoth. Like we are just a sliver of the market. So.
Right. And the 4 sponsored ads that you talked about. I mean, it's like tough to fight that battle when there's so much money being pushed on like against the truth.
So much and like so much fear. I mean, and it makes like when you think about it, like, yes, of course, when you explain raw to people and the raw diet, like just for like 5 minutes, it does click, right? It makes intuitive sense. But the bacteria thing is also like a great argument. Like it scares a lot. You're like, oh gosh, yes. Because we have so much fear about like bacteria in chicken and like, it's like, oh my God, I think that it really is an effective way to scare people away from it and it's just, I don't want to say that it can't happen, right? But like raw company, like it's just, we're not seeing that. People aren't like getting sick and like their animals they wash their hands, like use basic hygiene practices with like just as you would, especially if you're buying from a reputable company that's using like has quality sourcing. It's really easy to feed raw safely. You have to be cognizant that you're feeding raw and wash your hands and wash the bowls and like, but that's it. It doesn't really require much else.
I can't believe how unregulated those processing facilities are. So like you're saying horses, other dogs, pigs, these like diseased animals, and they're just legally able to mix these things turn them into a meal.
And I'm not really sure of like all the laws, but like I do know that the FDA does say that animals that weren't killed for food aren't supposed to be used in food, but somehow there's like this loophole where, because I think it's really hard to check the actual finished dried powder protein source, right? So I guess maybe the rendering plants don't have that monitoring that. And again, it's like a very effective recycling method, and it's where is all of that stuff going to go?
Who are some of the best resources out there? We talked about Dr. Ian Billinghurst, who's amazing. Are there any other resources that you can think of that are helpful for people to kind of unpack this whole philosophy around raw food?
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's helpful to like follow all the raw companies too, like on social, and we're all kind of in this together too. So it's like a very small business. It's not saturated. So we always, if there's like one, a recall for one raw company, it would be bad for all raw companies. I think that the more like come like we need more, because it's really hard. It's a heavy lift to do this education. So I think following the raw companies, Dr. Karen Becker wrote The Forever Dog with Rodney Habib. I don't know if you guys have heard of that book. It was like it is a New York Times bestseller. It's really good. It's easy to understand and very thorough. I mean, there's lots of, I'm trying to think who else are, even like the better for you pet food brands that might not, like there's Dr. Harvey's who does like pet food supplements. Like all of these people are pro raw, but just feeding your dog better, just thinking differently about what we feed our animals. I think, I don't know, we're an online brand, so we rely heavily on social. So I'm like always about, I think there's a lot of education that can happen on there. So yeah.
Are you encouraged by the trends that you're seeing with like the pet food industry? Like, do you think we're just going to continue to see more and more pet owners that are switching towards the raw diet?
Yeah, it's hard to say because like, and you asked me a question like, when did you go down the raw food rabbit hole? And I'm like, I'm in the raw food rabbit hole every day.
All day, every day.
All day. Come down and visit. It's crazy. Like when you're right. I do think that it's changing. It is changing. So raw is the fastest growing segment of the pet food market, freeze dried raw. So that's very encouraging, but it's also a sliver still. So I think that I'm also in this world. So it feels like yes, like people are, I mean, our business is growing and doing really well, and we continue to grow, and that has to be a sign. And we have a very good lifetime value, which means the customer's sticking with us, the product's working. I think that this type of business has always been about word of mouth power, like it's like someone tries the food, they feed it to their dog, they see the amazing benefits, then they want to share it. Like people become brand evangelists without us really doing much at all, because it's an amazing thing. It's like, you guys like trying something that works for your health, you want to share it, right? You're like super excited about it. So the same thing happens with this. So I think that will always be a big piece of it. And then I guess how to leverage that word of mouth power more.
Yeah. It's literally how you guys started, right? It's like your sister believed in this thing so much.
Yeah.
You talk about like at the time, like a quote unquote unscalable business, like buying these super expensive ingredients, charging way more for it. Sushi chef processing it, hand delivering it in the Austin heat. But it was like, that's how much she believed in this thing.
How much, I know. And that really, and like the people that we're feeding at that time too, were like, we call them like the fanatics, which isn't really the customer you necessarily want. They're tough customers. They ask a million questions. They want to know everything about the,
purists.
They're like, nothing can be wrong ever. But they're the ones that we're so grateful for, because they were there to believe in it when like not a lot of people did. So, I mean, I think that it's definitely, there was a period when we've had to make it more scalable, right? My sister and Rich, they used to do like the grinds, which we do now, but they also did like the bones on the side if you wanted those. And then there was like, I don't know, like 12 different proteins. And then like all these different, it used to be like based on sushi too, like not fish, but like they were sushi roll. I mean, it was just like too many different options, and really fun and cute, but like it wasn't scalable. So it's been through a few different iterations, and people get mad at us still to this day. Like, oh, I wish they didn't take this away or didn't take that away. Or someone said the other day on a comment, now I kind of like, I don't laugh, but I've developed a much thicker skin because I think like, God, you have to just be like so messed up to say something like this. But one of the comments we got, that one of my customer service, she's like, do you want to respond to this? And I'm like, I'll pass. But it was a comment on our origin story video. And the woman was saying, I saw your video. It was so heartwarming. You've done such a good thing, but your prices are outrageous and you're so greedy, and your sister would be so upset, sad. It's like, wow. Okay, well, my sister would want this to still be a business and not like out of business. So it's just, it's just crazy, like some of the stuff, but
the internet brings out all the trolls and like,
oh my gosh,
people who are just
exposes them.
Yeah,
I know, but it's definitely a sign of growth for me, because again, I didn't tell the origin story for a long time. I had mixed feelings about it. I just didn't know if I wanted, it's a tough thing, and I don't necessarily want those types. I knew those comments would come. But now I can handle it, and I don't know. I feel like I just sort of like let it bother me for a second, and then I'm over it.
Yeah. We found that when we launched Noble, there was one, like we got a lot of really positive responses. And then there were also a lot of people that were like shitting on us for the price of the product. Yeah. And I'm like, well, it's like a premium product. So do you not want us to make money to keep like trying to push beef and animal protein into the market? It's the same thing like you were saying. It's like, do you not want us to make money so we can keep fighting the good fight and spreading the message?
I think people don't understand. And it's like, then people want to tell you like how to run the business. I'm like, do you want to see our P&L? Because like this is, but yeah, I mean, it's really insane. I think, and especially, you guys know that. I mean, it's like when you have a premium product, it's just the sticker shock is really hard for people. And I think like, usually a premium product is not does not have the margins of like cheaper products out there, right? They're the ones who are greedy. Go after them. Those are the ones that are like, so I don't know. I just feel like, who's the guy that's founded Whole Foods, but he says like,
John Mackey.
He's John Mackey. He's like unapologetic about, he's like quality costs more. Period. There's nothing really, we could make our food cheaper, but then we'd have to add filler ingredients. We'd have to use like low grade meat. There's lots of things that we could do, but
at the end of the day, you vote with your dollars. And like, if you truly believe in a mission, there's some level of, premium to that belief, and the quality of life at the end of the day for your dog, or if it's for your own health, buying better food, like that also does have positive effects.
Yeah, we get a lot of comments too about oh, I could do this myself for cheaper. And it's like, that's great. Then you can't, like, we are really all in favor of however you want to feed raw. But this is for people that don't want to, you know, we're providing a service. And if you really believe that raw is best, then you would want that for other dogs too. And like, I lived in New York City for 18 years. I had no way I was going to make raw myself. Like, you know, what was I going to do? Go to the butcher, have a grinder in my small apartment, like do all, like I couldn't even feasibly do it, nor did I want to, you know? Yeah. So I think this is a great option. And like, it just allows us to get raw into more bowls. And it's going to cost more than doing it yourself because we're providing a service.
Totally.
Guess what? That labor isn't free, you know?
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
Living in New York really gives you an appreciation for dog owners and how much you really want to have a pet. Because I remember thinking, because I lived in New York for 4 years, and I remember thinking, I worked down in Fidei, and I remember thinking, oh, having a dog would be so cool. And then I would see like a dog take a crap right on the cobblestone on Wall Street and see the owner have to pick it up. And I'm like, maybe I don't want a dog that much, actually.
Like, it's like freezing. When I lived in New York City, I had an English bulldog. So she was like, kind of like a house cat. I mean, she was really active and great, but like, she didn't really like love to do, like, she was just like very cuddly. And, but yeah, I mean, it's hard having a dog in New York City, but everything's hard in New York City.
It really is. Amy, one of the things that you said in the beginning that gave me goosebumps, and I could tell Harry was reacting to it as well, is like, you were mentioning how there are a lot of moments where you really feel like your sister is with you. And if you're comfortable with me asking, I'm just curious, like, what were just some of like the favorite parts about her personality, or just maybe like things that you learned from that you just trying to like kind of bake into your own life and who you are as a person?
Yeah. I mean, my sister and I were very close. Like, we were 2 years apart. She was my younger sister. You know, she was just an amazing, kind person. I know like everyone say that about their family members, but she really truly was. And she was such an out of the box thinker in a way that I'm not even. Like, I can think about how to make things look better, sound better. I'm good at the marketing part of it, but like, to come up with the idea, and not that she invented raw feeding, but like to come up with this idea and to believe in it so firmly, and to have such conviction and not need to have, you know, the backing of the masses. Like, it's a unique type of person. She really was unique, and she was kind to people, and she was kind to animals, and she was very, very smart. And I like, you know, miss her obviously all the time. And this, you know, I'm very dedicated to this. Sometimes my therapist and I talk about being pathologically dedicated, but it's good because I do, getting back to the whole gift thing, I do feel like, as you know, there's been times, and this was a hard business for a while, like before we got funding, you know, it was very bootstrapped, and there was a lot of scary times of like, are we gonna make it? And, you know, what are we gonna do? And like, you know, getting on my knees and being like, oh my God, like it was stressful. And there was times when I was like, is this a gift or is it a curse? Like, I don't know. Like, it felt like it could have been either sometimes. And I do ultimately feel like those times are important, right? Because it shows you, first of all, what you're made of. And like, I do feel like one of the biggest gifts is like, I don't know if you guys feel like this with your business and what you're doing, but having to push through that hard. Like, I read a quote that said, like, just because something's hard doesn't mean it's wrong. You're doing it wrong.
Right.
You know? Like, and I feel like so many people abandon things because they're like, oh, it's hard. This must not be right. This not supposed to be this hard. And it's like, no, actually, like, some things are really fucking hard. Yeah. And if you push through it and you get to the other side, there's like a whole other world on that other side that like would not have been clear to you or visible to you unless you pushed through it. Yeah. And that's the biggest gift for me, is like actually having, just sticking with it and you're not giving up.
There's so much faith involved with entrepreneurship that
oh my gosh, I know.
It's like you almost have to believe in magic for entrepreneurship.
You have to be a little freaking crazy. Like, you have to be like, because there were so many people all along too. Even my own husband, who's involved in the business now, he's like, "What are we doing? Like, this is not good. Like, this is not normal." You know, like so many times.
And now he's the COO.
Yeah. And he's still saying
How'd you trick him to do
that? I had to beg him to get involved. He did not want to, but he's great, and he's, you know. But it was hard because there was a lot of people telling us like, I don't know, you know, like, I don't know. Not a lot of people support you when you're in that weird space, right? You're like, everyone's like, okay, like, good luck, you know? And you just feel very alone, and kind of have to, like you were saying, Harry, like you gotta be a, like, just believe in magic. And I talked to my sister a lot. It's funny. I always tell this story that it was like a really, really tough time. And I was like, I need something. Like, I need to hear something. I need to, like, read something. I am, like, I'm losing the faith. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And just like 5 minutes later, I forget even who sent me the text, but it was someone telling me to listen to the podcast, How I Built This.
So good.
I listened to that podcast like nonstop. I like binged it for 2 weeks and it brought me back to life. I was like, holy crap, there's other people. Like all of these stories, like of people not being able to pay the payroll, or like, you know, the Stonyfield Farm yogurt guys, they got like that product locked in. I mean, it was just like, that was exactly what I needed, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like that show, because we've been thinking about this a lot, because we're in the process of trying to break through that wall. And you have the best days of your life as an entrepreneur, then the next day is literally the worst day of your life. You feel literally bipolar or mentally insane.
I know. But, don't celebrate. I know.
Yeah, because you just don't know what the next day is going to be like. But Harry and I have been saying, maybe it's actually supposed to be hard. And the fact that it's hard is a good thing.
Yes.
Like, no shit, you're selling a raw dog food company that's way more expensive. Obviously, it's going to be hard to scale that, or like a protein powder, or like turning a podcast into a business. You know how hard that is to do?
No, it's crazy. And like so many other people want to do it. And then there's like people that are envious of, like, especially with probably what you guys are doing. Cause like, I feel like I talked to, there's like a group in Charleston where I live. It's a bunch of female entrepreneurs, and they asked me to speak. And I was like, anyone that's telling you that what they're doing, if they have business and they're starting and it's not hard, they're not doing it right. Like they're not doing it right. I mean, it is supposed to be hard. Like that is part of it. Not hard in a bad way constantly, but sometimes, like, I don't know, it feels like, you know, it's you're trying to sort of like disrupt a space too. I mean, we're definitely disrupting a space, right? So there's pushback, there's people questioning you. There's like, I mean, there's landmines everywhere, and like, especially the raw food industry, you know, it's like, so I think that if you believe in it, and like, you do have to sort of hold on to those small wins though, because it carries you through and it gives you the energy to like, and like eventually, you know, you sort of like, it's almost like eating healthy. Like after a few months, you're like, oh, I'm starting, okay, wait, man, we're onto something here. Like you start to like, get some traction and momentum. And I think that's what happened with us. We needed funding, and we were looking, and it was tough, and we were like, kept pulling rabbits out of our hats, and we were like, oh, we got money over here. And then we eventually partnered with some really good investors, and it was the best thing. And, we wouldn't have gotten there though, if it wasn't a lot of my crazy, like, just like, I felt like there wasn't really a choice, you know, like I felt like, I think if I felt like maybe I'm giving myself like too much credit saying like I pushed through the hard, I don't feel like, and I did push through the hard, but I also felt like I didn't have a choice. So I had to push through the hard. But again, it was really cool to push through the hard, because it's not like you're like, on the other side. There's still like tons more work all the time,
more
every
hard.
day. And then here's more hard.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
It's the like best feeling when you feel like there's no choice. Like this is just it. You're like in harmony with what you're supposed to do.
There's a freedom.
Yeah, there's a freedom.
There's no plan B. No. It's either you're going to make this or we're going to be on the streets.
And like, what's the Jay-Z quote? Like, I love, it's like the genius thing we did was that we didn't give up, which is like so simple, but it's like, that is genius, right? It doesn't have to be like, oh, some like smart professor giving you this like really profound quote. It's like, that's what's genius about it. So many people do give up. Right? Yeah. So many people do. Yeah.
When you accept that you're not going to give up, you basically take away the time horizon where it's like, if you keep shooting bullets, eventually you will be successful.
Yeah.
It might not be in a year, it might be 20 years, but eventually you're going to get there.
Right. And you might have to pivot, and you have to be nimble, and you have to like, you can't get to, sometimes it like opens up different doors, and you have to like try different things. But yeah, I mean, I do think there's just a lot to be said for not giving up.
I love what you were saying about celebrating the small wins too. And I've been thinking about this a lot, that more entrepreneurs or people that are doing something or creating something should really take inventory at the end of their week on all the things that they did. Because sometimes it's like, we'll be at the end of our week and be like, shit, we have to do all this other stuff. We could have done this. We could have done that.
Yeah.
And like I think it was on like Friday or Saturday, we were like, dude, we did this and did that. Like, that's actually an amazing week. Like, why are we not recognizing how great that was? Like, if you knew that you were going to do what you just did a year ago, you would have been so proud of yourself.
I know. It's true. I have the same problem. I can't help you.
I feel like it's sometimes
I can't help you.
Sometimes the wins happen like a lightning bolt. It's like, oh, you had a phone call with someone and it was just like, something big happened, but then the losses feel like they're just persist, like the balance isn't equal, but
it's every day. There's failures and wins every day. Like you just have to roll with them. And, I think the most important lesson I've learned is just to not, get too bogged down with them. Like you just have to be able to be resilient and bounce back faster. I felt that for sure, that change in me. And I was like, okay, all right, now I'm feeling like the growth. Like I'm not, I used to be like, oh my God, like, what are we going to do? Like this is, and now I'm like, it's also like you build confidence because you're like, we've been through worse before. My husband and I always say that, like there's been worse before.
Definitely.
So,
What's been your guys' biggest win?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think, trying to think like how to choose. I think probably when we partnered with these investors, they are big raw champions, and they were, we were having calls with lots of VCs, and wasn't the best discussions all the time, and people that just maybe don't really get it or don't get the vision or just looking for money. These people are, again, raw champions, and they believe in raw, so that felt like we went through, a lot of negotiations with them and ended up signing a deal where, they are big investors, and it's worked out really well for us. And it's been good because it's given us, solid footing, kind of like we're not just like every month, like, it's hard, raw frozen food. I mean, you're shipping raw frozen meat around the country. Like there's so many things that can happen. So not that those things still can't happen, but like we've been like shored up, and now we used to ship when we had a facility in Maine. So like at the northeast, like the corner of the country to the rest, you can imagine how expensive that was, all the problems that can happen. Now we have 3 distribution centers. We manufacture our food in the center of the country. And then we have distribution centers in California, New Jersey, and Dallas, Texas. So everything's like fast shipping. We have everything usually gets there within 1 or 2 days at the most. Ships frozen, it shows up frozen. So we're just in a better place. But like with growth comes like other problems too,
Definitely.
and more things and more exposure and people saying things and like competition. I mean, it's just so, but it's dare I say, fun too, it's fun learning. Some days I'm like, I don't think it's fun, but I think overall, like looking at it, it's fun. It's rewarding. It's sometimes if you're just in a 9-to-5 job, like I could never go back to a 9-to-5. Could you guys?
No.
It's like stagnation hell. Like
we talk about that all the time.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's something, right? Making a difference. Also, like we are doing something good. Like that is so cool, right? I mean, not to say anything bad about Kenneth Cole because they were a great company to work for, but like writing fashion copy isn't really doing that much for humanity.
Totally.
But not that we're doing something, but we're helping dogs. Like we have an amazing product.
What's
we need a name for it. But we're helping so many dogs, and it's such a good product, and it feels really good. And also like everyone that works at our company believes in it so much. It's so fun to be around all of these people that believe in the product so much. They're all animal lovers. I mean, I don't know if I would hire someone that wasn't an animal lover, but they're also just they're magnets to us. So like we find these people that are, all have like tons of dogs themselves. They're like really into dogs. They've come from other dog companies. So it's kind of like I'm always with my people,
Yeah. Finding the right investors is such a blessing too, because I'm sure in some ways it probably gave you a little bit of a chance to breathe where you're like, all right, we know we're going to keep the lights on. We can fulfill payroll. We can make investments in other areas to grow the business. Like we have 2 businesses right now, the media business and the Noble. Noble is actually funded through angel investors, and the media business is purely bootstrapped. And there's definitely pros and cons to both, where it's like media business, we don't answer to anyone, but you definitely have those months where you're like, cash flow is getting a little bit tight this month. We got 4 people to pay versus like Noble being investor funded. It's like, all right, we know we're going to keep the lights on. We have like a great run rate. We have ability to invest this money, but pros and cons to both for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And like for me, this was never going to be like, get rich off of this company. This was really to keep, and the company is very successful and it will go on to be very successful. But it's my sister, like, if she saw it today, I know she sees it, but like, I know she would be so proud of it. You know,
Oh, yeah.
it's amazing how many more dogs we're feeding and like how many dogs are getting to like, we're saving, you know, because of this. So that's really the most rewarding part.
Do you know how many dogs you've fed total?
I don't know. People have asked. We don't
That
have
would be
like,
such a cool statistic.
I know. I guess we could how many we fed, how many we currently have. I mean, we have some of these numbers, but like we're growing a lot though. We're like in a very high growth phase, which is a great sign because more and more people are coming, you know, turning to this way of feeding. So yeah.
What's your guys' vision for the next few years?
So I think we'll probably try to open another distribution center too. And we have treats coming. We're very excited about treats and toppers. So treats will be like single ingredient, really awesome treats we haven't finalized this yet, but of proteins that we don't offer in the meal plans yet. So we have chicken, duck, turkey, beef, venison, and lamb in our meal plan. So there'll be something different than that. And then we're going to do some toppers that are freeze dried. So this could be something that you add to our food or to even if you're feeding kibble. So you could like feed this freeze dried raw too, or for our customers. One of the problems with frozen raw is like, I think it's the best. Freeze dried raw is a great option.
Yeah.
It's still raw. It still has like a lot of the nutrients. It's just you have to add the moisture to it. But for people that are traveling, I mean, it's hard to travel with frozen raw. You know, Harry, like,
It's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, we have people that like take their Yeti coolers and like pack them and like all of that. Yeah. But yeah, so having a more like travel friendly option or shelf stable option that's not kibble, but like freeze dried raw. So just expanding line extensions, I think would be good. Also getting much more into like the charity part of it too. It's hard with frozen raw because you know, kibble companies can send like bags of food. So like you can't just be like sending frozen raw to shelters or, you know, so figuring out how we can give back is important to us too.
Well, the treats will probably be a great way to give back, right?
Yeah, the treats will be great because they can be used as toppers too. And again, they'll be like really healthy. So that would be, that's great. Yeah.
Amy, what's the best way to connect with you or We Feed Raw for people that are interested just to learn more and maybe get some of your dog food?
Yeah. I mean, follow us on social, just at We Feed Raw. I'm always on there. Yeah, that's where I am always like monitoring that. That's like Instagram is our main channel. So we're very engaged with our followers and always answering comments and I'm always seeing all of those. So yeah, probably should not be checking in as much. But I think it's important to have your finger on the pulse. I really do. Like I'm so protective of, it's important to hear what people are saying and getting the feedback, but you know, being in the mix is important.
Yeah, and social media makes it so much easier to do that.
Totally, yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us. This was so much fun and so long overdue too.
I know.
We just really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Yeah, you have an important role. It's like you nourish Sunny, obviously, which is amazing. And you're doing such great work. But even just to like learn more about like just the humble origins and your sister and how proud you're all probably making her is so amazing. And for you to be in Austin too, which is ground zero for that is so special.
Cool.
So thank you so much for making the trip.
Thanks,
Amy.
Cool.
Thanks.